It's something I get a ton of questions about this. What became the Winery Dogs, but was going to be a different band that instead of Richie Kotzen on the vocal guitar spot would have been John. And the reason why I get so many questions about it is because I was there. I was helped orchestrate it all. I helped try to hold it together. But it couldn't be held together, and it imploded. And that's how the Winery Dogs came about, because I suggested, after John didn't want to do it with Mike and Billy said to me, hey, we'd still love to do, Billy and I would still love to do a power trio together. We don't know who we could get to be the singer-guitar player. And I suggested Kotzen. I contacted Richie for them, and it connected everyone, and then they went off and made the Winery Dogs. Very, very, very important distinction here, though, and thing to know. When people listen to the Winery Dogs record and those songs on it, the first record, Elevate, and all of that, it's an amazing record. There are people wonder, like, is that the music that the band would have been doing with John? No, not at all. That music had nothing to do with the Sykes project. The music and the songs that they would have done if John would have stayed in the band were all songs John wrote, and completely different material, completely different. Once Richie plugged in with those guys, he brought that material in with Mike and Billy, and it became what the Winery Dogs are. But if the band would have happened with Sykes, none of those songs on the Winery Dogs records were written exclusively when Richie came in. The songs that they would have done if it was John predominantly wrote, and those are the songs that are on this still yet to be released record that John made 10 years ago at least. But the story goes that I want that the people want to hear is, so this would have been about 2015. Would have been about 2014, 2015, somewhere around then. And Billy and Mike are doing a band with John Sykes. The band didn't really have a name, but they were going to potentially call the band Bad Apple. That was the working name of the band. They started working on material at John's home studio in Northridge, California. And they demoed songs. And the demos are very, very rough. They were basically live, just all of them playing live, to these songs that John wrote. And they came on that metal show to promote it. Mike and John did. Mike and John, it aired. It exists. That's why those photos you see out there with Portnoy, me, and Sykes, that was all of that time where that band was, we all thought, going to happen. And John and Mike came on the TV show to announce the formation of that band. And then shortly after the show aired, it fell apart. And it fell apart for a lot of different reasons. It fell apart because, as I mentioned with John, as talented as he also was very, very guarded, very, very untrusting, very complacent at times, just not trusting, not, moving at a very slow pace. And Portnoy is the total opposite. So that was really at the core of it, at least from what I saw. And anyway, the story of all this is that I went out to, there's a guy who actually reached out to me yesterday about all this, a legendary figure in the music industry named Derek Schulman. Derek signed Bon Jovi. Derek has a huge history in the music industry. Derek himself was a musician at one point. He headed record labels, all this stuff. Derek was managing this band and John Sykes at that time. Over the last 10, 15 years, tons of people wanted to work with John, management, label, etc. Some did, and it imploded. Some never got off the mat. Again, he was not the easiest guy to deal with, if I'm being honest, in that way. So Derek was managing the band at that time. And Derek knew that I was one of the few people that John liked and respected and trusted. And I was out here doing that metal show. And it was out here, meaning here in LA. Again, it's probably around 2014. And I had a day off from shooting. And I was hanging out with Don Jameson. And I get a phone call from Derek. And Derek says to me, Ed, can you come out to John Sykes' house in Northridge? And I was like, well, Derek, I mean, I'm in LA, but it's a day off. I'm with Don, and we're, whatever we're doing. We're going to lunch. We're going to do something. And Northridge is, with traffic can be 2 hours from where we were. But he said, look, here's what's going on. I know you want to see this band happen, but it's starting to implode. And this might implode today, and you might be the only guy that John will listen to kind of hold it together. Can you come out here? And I said, yeah, I got Don with me, but, he's like, yeah, it's fine. He knows Don. It's fine. Come on out. So I said to Don, and Don's a huge, huge Thin Lizzy fan. So he's like, fuck yeah, let's go. We got to go. So we drive out to Northridge. We go in, and it was just a weird tension as soon as we went in the room, because it was a band that made demos but was fracturing. It was falling apart. And I'm supposed to come in to try to save this thing. And Sykes wants nothing to do with it. He doesn't want anything to do with the manager, Derek. He doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want to see Don. He doesn't want to see Portnoy Sheen. He wants to be left alone and whatever. So I walk into the house, and John had the studio, and I was like, what's going on, buddy? I said, where's the problem, man? Maybe we can work this out. And I don't want to say too much here because there's certain feelings that could still be hurt for some of these people that were involved. But John was adamant about was not sold on the band, the lineup, the trio, the whole thing. He wasn't sold on all the personnel making sense. We'll leave it at that. And I'm in this studio with him. Me, him, and Derek, the manager. And Don was like kind of walking in and out from what I remember. And the manager, Derek, kept saying, listen, John, why don't you just play the demos for Eddie so he can hear what's going on and he can give you his thoughts and you can see what you talk about it with him from there. So I'm going to John. John, yeah, come on, let's hear it. I'm dying to hear some stuff. Let's play the demo. John's like, I'm not fucking playing the fucking demo. It's not ready yet, mate. It's not ready. I'm not playing it. It's not ready. And the manager's going, hey, look, John, Eddie's in the music industry forever. He knows what a demo is. He knows that it's not fully done. He knows what a demo is. He's listened to a million demos. Play him the demo. He's got to hear what you're doing. John, I'm not playing the fucking demo. He's like, it's just getting really worked up about it. And now I'm getting uncomfortable because I don't want to piss John off. It's like I'm just here because the manager called me out. It was crazy. And the manager, and then Mike comes walking in, Portnoy, and he's just like, come on, man, play the demos or whatever. And Mike's like happy-go-lucky, whatever. And Sean's like, you fucking go back in the other room, man. I don't want to know about it. He was like, it was bad. And then Don, because Don had no skin in the game. Don was just there along for the ride. There was a point, and Don and I laugh about this all the time. There was a point where John got so upset at me just standing there waiting to hear a demo. And Billy Sheehan was out in his living room and Portnoy bopping in and out like without, ready to go. And the manager hovering, trying to orchestrate this, that John gets up out of the chair and he looks at Don and he goes, "You know what, Don? You're the only person not pissing me off right now. Come on outside, man. Let's go sit by my pool and have a nice cold soda." So Don is like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go, John." So John gets up out of the chair, and next thing I know, I'm looking through the glass sliders out to John's pool, and there's John and Don sitting on pool chairs, opening a cooler and cracking a Coke. And Don is like loving life because this is a hero, and he's like sitting there talking Thin Lizzy by the pool while I'm inside with Billy, Mike, and the manager, Derek, trying to hold this band together and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So after they're out there cooling out, having their soda break, John comes stumbling, not stumbling, but comes kind of walking back in. It was his house. And he sits back down in the chair at the console. Now I'm back in the room. Derek is standing there, the manager, and again he's like, "John, you got to play the demos ready." And then John went into this. I'm going to clean this up a little for the radio, even though I really don't need to. I don't know, maybe that guy yesterday is in my head. But John went into this comparison about I'll never forget the rest of my life, about the difference between making an analogy between the quality of a demo and the quality and how you would want a woman before you were to have sex with her. We'll leave it at that. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. I know I don't need to. Maybe one day I'll unleash the actual verbiage. It was very British. We'll leave it at that, what he said. But he was like, you're about to be with a woman. You want her cleaned and groomed and smelling great. You're about to hear a demo. You want it to be in tune, sounding great. He made this analogy I'll never forget. And I'm just cracking up. He's got his feet up on his desk on his mixing board, his console, and he's going, "Eddie, you're going to be with a chick. You want the chick clean and fresh and groomed. You don't want the fucking chick nasty." And, I'm cleaning it up. Trust me, it was way, way more crazy than this. And he's going, "Same thing if you listen to a demo, man. You want it in tune. You want all the instruments there." I go, "John, but I know what a demo is, right?" So finally we talked John into playing me the demo. And he's like, "I'll play him a couple." So John goes, and here's John's out. John goes, "I'd play him the demo, but I don't know how to turn on the console in my studio." Now, this is his own home studio. He's trying to tell us he didn't know how to turn the equipment on. And me and the manager, Derek, are like, "John, it's your studio. You don't come in here and work? You don't know how to turn the equipment on?" He goes, "No, man, I use an engineer. I call the engineer when I need him. I don't know how to turn any of this on. Sorry, Ed, I can't play it for you." So that was his out. You don't know how to power up the console. So we're finally about to wave the white flag, and I'm like, "I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go to lunch. This is ridiculous." And in walks Billy Sheehan, who was sitting out in the living room, minding his own business during all of this, who I think John was conflicted with whether it made sense for him to do the band with him or not. And Billy walks in, having no idea of everything that's transpired. And he looks at me and John, and he goes, "What's going on? You play the demo, Fred?" And John's going, and the manager goes, "He can't play the demos. He doesn't know how to turn his console on, and his engineer's not available to come over here and start things up." And Billy walks over to the console and looks at it and goes, "Oh, I know how this works," and pushes a couple buttons, and the whole console powers up. And Sykes is livid. And he stands up out of the chair and he looks at Billy and he goes, "Bloody hell, Billy, don't go fucking pushing buttons on my fucking console. Don't go pushing buttons now, man." And Billy's like, "Oh, you got to understand, there was already tension. That's why I went out there. They already were hanging by a thread. And now a guy that John's not sure he wants to even be in a band with walks in and sabotages his last out for not playing me the demo by overriding and pushing the buttons on turning on his console." John gets up, puts his hands in the air, he goes, "Play him the fucking demo, fuck this," and he walks out of his own studio. So with that, I sat there and listened to the demos, and they were fine. The demos still exist. Again, I don't know if this stuff will ever see the light of day. And Billy's looking at me like, "What just happened?" I go, "I don't know." From that point, I knew it was unsavable. I knew it was unsavable. The vibe was just ridiculous. And I'm like, this is just, again, you hear about all this stuff, but I know you can't believe it, but this happens. This is common with so many bands, this kind of dynamic. Heard the demos. John comes walking back in after about 15 minutes. There was like 3 songs. And it was truly great. I'm like, "John, it sounds great." There was a song on it called "My Guitar," I remember. It was great, a great classic Sykes riff. I go, "John, it was great." I go, "Once this stuff gets produced, they're talking about using Bob Rock to produce it. He did the Blue Murder album. I go, it's going to be great." I don't know. So, we all made everybody calmed down. I heard the demos. We left. I got out. I'll never forget this, as I was leaving, we were all leaving John's house. We were going to leave him alone. I stopped and I said, "Hey, let's all take a picture together." And he said, "Okay." And I have the photo. To this day, I have the photo. And the photo is me, Don, the manager, Derek, Mike, Billy, and John, standing on his front lawn in Northridge before we all got in our cars and left. And that was the end of that band. Didn't know it when the photo was taken. But, shortly after, it was just days after, Portnoy calls me up and he's like, "John's not returning calls." I was like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." He goes, "We got to move on with this thing." I said, "All right." He said, "I don't know what we're going to do." He goes, "Me and Billy want to do a band, but I don't know who's the right guy to sing and play guitar and we could fill this out with." And I go, "I got a guy." And that's when I called Richie. And then Richie Kotzen comes in and they write new songs and they become the Winery Dogs. And then here's the last piece of this story. The carrot on top, the cherry on top. A couple years later, Winery Dogs debut comes out, does well, starts to happen. And I get a call from Sykes. He's like, "Eddie, what's going on, mate?" "Not much, John. How are you?" He's like, "I'm doing good. Hey, man, this band Winery Dogs that Sheehan and Portnoy are doing, man. It's pretty good stuff, man. It's doing pretty well. How did that happen?" I was like, "How did it happen? Don't you remember you were supposed to be in a band with those guys?" So he goes, "How'd they get that thing going, man?" And I told him the truth. I mean, these are the kind of conversations I would have with John all the time. I mean, it was just, I mean, and they weren't. I don't want to paint them as being like adversarial, like we were yelling or not. I would just laugh because he was just so unlike anyone I ever dealt with. Like, he's just like oblivious. And I'm like, John, when you bailed with those guys, I suggested Kotzen and it worked. I said, that's good, man. That's good. Well, I'm going to get my own thing going. I go, well, you should. And then he went and recorded a record of those songs with other musicians. And those 2 or 3 songs that are out on YouTube over the last 10 years are from that record, but the full record is yet to come out. I don't know what's going to happen to his archives. I don't know what's going to happen to that record. I hope some way it gets put out. He took a record deal for the record. He refused to release it with the label. So, that's Sykes in a nutshell, man. For the talent and the ability, there was just so many little quirks and difficulties he had to navigate around. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I know more. I wanted to take that time because there were people that did ask me on email as well. So that's the story in a nutshell, and I hope it was worth the time that we took telling it. Let's do a break. We'll come back. We'll have another hour, just shy of another hour to work with here on a Free For All Friday. If you want to continue remembering John, that's all good. If you want to call in about anything else, that's all good as well. We continue next on Trunk Nation.
Never check.